Up next, we have a pretty incredible panel. It's entitled Build Local and Distribute Global. So we have coming up to the stage here some app developers, some developing companies, some brands that have made some incredible headway internationally. And so I want to first welcome to the stage the moderator for this session, Mr. Benjamin Joff, who's the CEO of PlusStar 8. Benjamin. And also in this panel will be representatives, executives from GetJar, from Zynga, Groupon, Foursquare, and Zepto Labs. Let's welcome them all to the stage. Hello?
Hello?
Hello. Hi. All right, so, well, welcome everyone for one of the afternoon sessions, I think among the most exciting. I'm really impressed by this event. I remind all of you that this is the first time to organize an event in Silicon Valley. I think it's great to have such a big conference around mobile. And I hope that with the current panel, you'll hear more about how to develop business internationally. I think a lot of you are from US-based companies. International sounds like great plan, but generally it's kind of hard to find how to get started. So many of those companies have had successes outside the US market, and we're going to hear from them. So I'll just introduce myself very quickly. My name is Benjamin Joff. I run a research company named Plus8 Star, focusing on Asian markets. I've been living in Asia for over 10 years, in Japan, Korea, China. I'm a little bit culturally confused, but that's okay. And I'm going to actually ask the panelists to introduce themselves because in a short sentence, I think most of you are familiar with the companies. So if you could maybe get started.
Sure. Hi, I'm Chris Dury, CEO of GetJar. GetJar provides app recommendations and app deals for Android apps in Google Play. We do this with a virtual currency that allows consumers to purchase in-app items for our partners' apps. And for developers, we help them monetize and grow their users with an SDK that allows them to sell their items for GetJar Gold. Since launching this service in the last 7 months, we've grown 20 million active users.
My name is Jonathan Flesher. I head up business development for Zynga. Zynga is a developer and publisher of social games, both on the web and mobile devices.
My name is David Katz. I'm the general manager of mobile at Groupon. We operate a daily deal site in 48 countries around the world.
My name is Holger Lüdorf. I manage business development for Foursquare. We're a social mobile location application and also a local search engine.
Hi, my name is... I think it's working. There you go. My name is Michel Allen. I'm CEO of Zepto Lab. We're the company that created one of the hit games called Cut the Rope. We have about a quarter of the billion users by now.
Okay, I'll just do a quick survey of you guys just to get to know how much you know about those companies. So who heard of GetJar before? So I heard of them. Okay, about maybe half the crowd. Okay, Zynga?
Hey, this isn't fair.
Groupon?
Come on.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Foursquare? So maybe you don't know the company name, Zepto Lab, but who knows Cut the Rope? All right, who plays Cut the Rope? All right, who buys deals on Groupon? Who checks in on Foursquare? I stopped, I'm sorry. And who downloads apps on GetJar? Less people, okay. It's a kind of a little bit biased audience. All right, so that gives you an idea of how much you're known, and as you can see, you're actually quite well known. So to get directly into the topic, I think among the things that companies need to understand when they want to go international is where to go. So if you can describe us which are the key markets for you and whether you decided to go there by yourselves or the market just happened, as it sometimes happened. So maybe if you can start with GetJar.
Sure. So we work with thousands of app developers, and so I can talk maybe more generally about what we see for Android, where we're really specializing. I think, as everybody knows, the best monetizing markets for Android are the Western markets, primarily US, UK, Germany. Japan does quite well. In other countries, though, there's a massive gap, and so a lot of maybe the rest of the panel will talk about in iOS, they see about 5 times higher monetization than you see in Android in those other countries. And so when you're thinking about growing your app business, a lot of the focus is in those existing incumbent markets. But because mobile has become so large now, we just crossed 1 billion smartphones, you can create very large businesses in only one or a couple of countries. And I think that's for the first time. It's not true on the web so much, maybe in certain verticals, but in general it's not. But in Android you can, and obviously there are very large mobile companies in China as an example, but I think you'll see that more and more.
Maybe I'll ask Jonathan of Zynga and David from Groupon, because your companies have had very aggressive strategies in expanding internationally. So how did you pick the countries, and what were the results? If you can tell us more about that.
Okay, I'll go first. So you really have to answer that question in 2 parts. One is, where did we grow the Groupon business? And the second is, how have we expanded mobile across our footprint? The answer to the first is pretty simple. You know, we were in a brand new, fast-growing space, and so Groupon worked aggressively through acquisition and organic development to get into as many countries as we could as quickly as possible. We're now in 48 countries around the world. I think we're the #1 deal site in probably 35 of those. Mobile, we've been a little bit more careful with, although we have a very aggressive footprint there too. We're mobile in about 35 countries now. We are mobile on iPhone apps, iPad apps, Android apps, Windows Phone apps, BlackBerry, Symbian mobile website. And the big decision for us has been how to prioritize those investments by country. And it's really been driven by usage patterns. We want to make sure that in every country where we deploy mobile, we're on the dominant platform first, and that we're being really responsive to what users in that market want.
Good. You've done really well with early acquisitions in Europe. Then fortunes were a little bit different across Asia. So in Japan, you also did acquisition. China, you did a partnership. So what motivated you to go to those markets, and what happened? Like, if you can tell a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about individual deals, of course. No, I think in general, we wanted to be, kind of smart and aggressive in getting footprint around the world. It's worked well in many countries, less great in some others. I don't know that there have been, singular examples of why it works in one place or not another. I think that from a mobile development point of view, one of the things that we've learned is that every country is different, and that we need to build we've needed to build our apps and our platforms with enough flexibility to accommodate those differences without winding up with 48 different apps.
So, Jonathan.
And I'd say from Zynga's perspective, Facebook really changed the dynamic for gaming. Compared to traditional console games, we didn't have to go out and develop retail relationships across the globe. Facebook actually solved that issue for us. We ended up with a platform that went global very quickly, and we rode along with it. And we have a similar relationship with Apple and Google on their mobile platforms as well. And so I'd say from the beginning, from Zynga's perspective, the launch of Farmville was something that went international almost by accident. It's one of those games that it crosses cultural boundaries and can be played pretty much by anyone. And then in 2010, we were a little more intentional. We really started localizing the games. And then in 2011, I'd call it, we were international by design. We really started thinking more holistically about the game and the content that went in there and the partners that we would work with in each region. And that's around the time when we expanded into China, which is where obviously Facebook would not reach. So we work with partners Tencent and Sina there and have had great success in following that pattern.
Just as a follow-up question, China aside, did you find a lot of impact of doing better localization of your games?
Yes, there's significant uplift. And obviously, if you see heat in the market, and that's the beauty of a global platform like Facebook or like iOS or Android, is that you can actually see some heat for a game that's in one language and then see if that will then make a difference if you're going to localize it and start creating local content for that market. And you can see a really nice uplift. And obviously, it depends on market by market, but yeah, there's a significant impact when you do true localization.
Okay. I'd like to ask a new question to Holger and Misha, because you guys are also companies that leverage existing distribution via iOS, mostly via iOS initially, right? And so what kind of things have you observed in the pickup of your content? What kind of efforts have you done in localization, international expansion, opening offices maybe internationally? Maybe starting with Holger. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so for us, so first of all, you were just saying that you know, we're mainly on iOS. That's actually not true. We're across the board. We built in-house for iOS, BlackBerry, and for Android, and then we also developed for Symbian and Windows Phone and so forth. And so I think one of the patterns that we're seeing, and I think it's probably true for all of us here, different countries have different preferences when it comes to devices and so forth. So in emerging markets, for example, BlackBerry is particularly strong in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, and we see traffic there. And you know, we're really happy with the uptake that we're seeing of Foursquare on BlackBerry devices. And maybe, for example, some of the more high-end phones are not doing so well there. So for us as a mobile-first company, and 98% of our traffic is coming from smartphones, it's absolutely critical that we're available on pretty much all the platforms available out there. So actually very similar to what David had just said, which is true also for Groupon. The nice thing for us is the international growth was completely organic. 60% of our traffic is already coming from outside the US. We have peak countries like Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia, Japan, UK, for example. Those are all countries, I think they trend very similar to other social networks, and they are just, you know, have these massive audiences of like really socially aware people that want to connect themselves. So that's great. What we're doing kind of going forward now is we're, you know, what you see now actually is that we're one of the first mobile-first companies that actually now going back to the web. We just announced on Monday our new, what we call Logged Out Explorer. You can actually now go to Foursquare.com and use Foursquare just like you can use Google Local Search or Yelp and find excellent recommendations. And actually, if you then sign into Foursquare, you can get local recommendations based on kind of your social signals. So what your friends are preferring and what, you know, kind of your own usage patterns are. So that's going to be interesting to see how that's going to shift. But that's kind of been our approach. It's been very organic.
Just a quick question before moving on to Misha. Have you put any specific efforts in developing markets aside from moving to the various mobile platforms? Like, have you put efforts into getting your app promoted or partnering in other countries?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you can do in emerging markets, things like whitelisting. You know, we have SMS services that are doing well in emerging markets. So we definitely are trying to cater and kind of work actually locally with OEMs and carriers. Again, like as a mobile company, you know, we're a lot dependent on actually working with partners to kind of get our apps out there. And you know, it's not like on the web where, you know, it's kind of mainly for about kind of referring traffic. Yeah, I think that's it.
Misha?
I guess when we started, there were two people, right, that were focusing on making a game. Making a game for just Apple device that was available on the market at the moment, right? And when you make a game and you try to make it for the widest audience possible. So you focus on game design first, right? So the game has to be fun. And when you have a fun mechanic of delivering something from point A to point B, then you can start thinking about other aspects, like a character, for example. And when you design a character, you can certainly, I mean, we could have made them Russian and probably make a lot of success in Russia, but our game designers, and, you know, guys that created the game, the founders, they decided to focus on fundamental basic instincts, like feeding the child, for example, right? Because the monster Omnom who's in the game, he has emotions that are 100% pure. So if you give him candy, he's happy. You don't give him candy, he's very sad. And I think it's pretty universal in all the markets, right? So once the game obviously enjoyed a lot of success on Apple platform, we started going to other platforms. Android is the obvious one. And then in terms of international expansion, we look at different markets in this way. We look at what platforms they have. How can we deliver our content to users? And if we find that we can deliver our content to enough of users and the quality is, passes our standards, which are very, very high, then we do that. For example, we did the game in HTML5, right? Just for people that don't have a touch screen yet, right? And they can touch this game, they can feel it, and then they can maybe get more of our content. So initially it's from game design. Then the thinking starts.
So I would say on iOS, there's new games, good games coming up all the time. So how did you manage to stay up there and also get attention in other markets? And like, how do you get started in other markets?
Well, first of all, it's by design, right? Those platforms get started by design. I think we just do good to our consumers, to our gamers. If people love the game, the game spreads virally, right? I mean, you can spread it in any market. You don't have to do anything special to do that. Then the hardest part, I guess, is not really spreading the game, because a lot of things spread, and they spread like wildfire, and then they just crash and burn. The hardest thing is probably to keep it up. And to do that, we add more content. We constantly tweak game design a little bit to make the learning curve smoother and to have people really fall in love with what we do. And basically what happens after that is that our growth goes linear, no matter where we are in the ratings, no matter what's going on, right? I mean, we started with like 2 million monthly active users and growing to 50 million monthly active users. And it's not like that.
So I would say
constant.
It seems that compared to a lot of other apps, you treat your game as a service and you keep adding content so that you have very high retention.
Look, we started with, our game has boxes, right? Little monster Omnom arrives in a box and there's a candy attached to the rope and you start cutting it. And every box contained 25 levels. So initially the game was just, 3 or 4 boxes. It's 12 now. We don't take any extra money for them, right? We don't charge, we don't do anything. We just invest into our user base. We invest into love, because once you love something once, it has to be continuing experience.
Okay. There's another question I wanted to get through you guys. And because now you're already fairly advanced, and on the way probably tried a lot of things, made mistakes, had some things that worked out. What are the things you wish you knew when you started to look at international markets? You can start.
Sure. I think it's often when you have a good product, you find initial success in a lot of places. And you think that, wow, we're growing in Brazil or we're growing in China, and you expect the curve to sort of continue the way it does in your core markets. And you find that things just take a little longer. The partnership that you developed is working, but maybe not at the pace that you might expect. And the investment that you're going to have to make to really see that through is greater than what you thought. And so I think persistence is kind of the key to really succeeding on a global scale.
I'd say for us, from the gaming perspective, it's figuring out the different distribution channels that are in different countries and how unique they are in combination with the taste for the content. So making sure that you have the right partner in each country and trying to figure that out, not just where it is today, but where it's going to be in 2 years. Because remember, when Zynga started, MySpace was the big game in town, soon to be surpassed by Facebook. And so figuring out which one of these platforms is going to be the right one for you in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and how to make sure that your content truly is localized, not just with textual changes, but with real local content created by local developers that speak to local tastes.
So we just went through the process of redesigning our iPhone and Android apps. And we did the redesign to solve 3 problems, and they wound up being the same problem, which was interesting. I don't think we knew that at the outset. One was we had launched a whole bunch of new products. So we launched Groupon Getaways, our travel product. We'd launched Groupon Goods, our shopping product. We'd launched Groupon Rewards, our loyalty product. And none of them were really handled by the application all that well. In international markets, we had other new experiences emerging. If you travel the world with Groupon, you'll see, I saw the other day, we have Groupon Health in one market where there's a real interest in buying health services. So we have this similar problem as we went kind of country by country, needing to have the flexibility in the app to support the various experiences. And then we also wanted to have our mobile experience be super rich. We wanted to get to a place where using Groupon on your mobile device offered all the feature functionality of using it on a desktop and more. It turned out that solving those problems wound up being a hard UI challenge, so we had to fundamentally redesign our UI. If you take a look at our apps, you'll see that we now use this kind of carousel design where you can flip from one experience to another. It's a great experience, I guess I have to say that, but it's also a really flexible experience. So it lets us integrate new products in the US, it lets us integrate new products that grow up internationally, and it lets us continue what we've done, which is to have global apps. We didn't want to go down the path of having different apps for different markets, so by re-architecting with that in mind, we've got a great flexible platform that represents us well in all markets, but has that flexibility built in. And the last thing I'll say about the new apps is we're really happy with our iPhone app is now rated 5 stars in the App Store, in the US App Store, so we feel like we hit our goals well.
Yeah, one of the challenges for Foursquare in terms of internationalization is definitely for a small organization like us to get a very word-heavy application that Foursquare is, especially in comparison to apps like Twitter and Facebook, get the wording right. There's a very special tone around Foursquare. It's very lighthearted and fun, and it kind of very much reflects kind of the nature of our founders to a degree as well, and like actually translating that into other languages like German and Japanese and Bahasa Indonesia is actually very, very difficult and something we constantly struggle with, and we involve both professional translators as well as kind of our crowdsourcing mechanisms. The positive thing is that the app works really globally very well, and there's like so many things and reasons why people use the app that that we see like very distinct differences between different countries using the app. Like some people might use it predominantly for gamification and like for the things you can do to win things and brag about that on other social channels. There's definitely countries who are like really into the specials and saving money aspect, and then there's others like, for example, Brazil, that are like really into kind of the social connection and like being able to connect with their friends. Large urban areas in their local cities, but what we're seeing now is really kind of an interesting kind of convergence. All of a sudden, though, people do realize that all the check-ins that they're providing are really feeding this local recommendation engine, and they're really getting much better results on our app, and that's definitely something we like to see. So it's basically people check in for different reasons and basically thereby show us their preferences, but at the same time we can all uniformly provide them with this really great asset of like making local recommendations of where they should be going to have the next coffee or the next drink or the next meal. So that's actually, it works really well globally, and we can do that across countries.
There are some basic things that obviously we do. We localize, right? We take the game and put a lot of languages into support. And you have to be careful about this too. I mean, even you get people from Portugal tweeting you, telling you, well, you localized in Brazilian Portuguese. What's up with that, right? So it gets a little bit difficult, but it's actually a very simple and manageable problem. We had a fun problem actually to solve, and we're still solving it, where we didn't, in our game, the branding of our character, not very many people knew initially that his name was Omnom. And oh my God, he was called anything but Omnom, right? I mean, he's called the frog. Some people call them the monster, the little thing, the greens, whatever. But different people in different countries use different names, right? So we use that to kind of adjust our thinking how to market to those countries. But then our business is not just about making mobile games, right? We do a lot of other stuff. I mean, we do merchandising things. So there, the game is completely different, because if app stores worldwide have basically adapted to be international, and there are little tweaks you need to do. No, some small tweaks, some big tweaks, but to do offline world and to do merchandising and licensing, you actually have to set up sales force in every territory where you go to. So that was a big on our plate, and we've succeeded doing that. And that produces a lot of good results. And the important is that if you have a global brand, you cannot really make it so it will be one thing in one country and another thing in another country. Right? It has to be very universal. There has to be umbrella feeling and understanding about what it is that you do.
Okay. I have a couple more questions for you, but I also want you to think about questions you would like to ask your fellow panelists. So you're working in different businesses with different levels of successes in international, in your various services. So I thought maybe I'd give you that chance to actually ask others and let the audience benefit from it. But before that, I have a couple of questions, and one of them is, which countries are working best for you at the moment? I guess US is probably number one, but what's number two, and do you know why?
I can continue if you want to. It's very easy for us. US, UK, Canada, Australia, those countries, then Germany. That's in terms of kind of Western world territory. In Asia, it's obviously China. I mean, China is growing like...
So you're saying China is working well for you?
Look, in my business, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because our business right now is acquiring people.
Okay.
It's making more people love what we do. So it's working incredibly well.
So you're acquiring users, but is that monetizing well as well in China?
No.
No. Well, start somewhere.
Depends how you look at the business. If you look at your business today, you might say China is a disaster. If you look at your business 2 years from now, we enjoy what's happening there.
Okay, so you're grabbing mind share and exposing users to your brand and your universe, right?
Pretty much, because obviously if 2 years from now all we're going to deliver is the same product that we have today, then it was a failure, right? But if we continue and we build more products that people will also, again, I use the word love all the time, but people will love and have this emotional connection and attachment to it, we'll find a way to monetize. It's a step-by-step process in each territory, and it's very, very different. And because for us, we're not just a mobile gaming company, but we're exploiting a lot of different opportunities, we have to have strategies for every market, and it will be 10 hours if I describe them all.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up. So the Asian markets such as China, Japan, Korea have very strong install base of smartphones and tablets. If you're on iOS, people generally don't have a choice. If they want your game, they have to pay. So how do you see the performance of your game in those markets versus Western Europe?
A lot of piracy on Android specifically, and we don't do anything to combat it really. Again, we're acquiring people's love at this point. But look, markets have different models, and content that people consume, especially gaming content that people consume on devices in different territories, is very different. Korea is very different from US, and Germany is very different from France. It's a very, very big question to answer, but in general, again, I think our successful model will come, our success will come if we acquire more users and we give them more of our content, right? Not just the game, everything that we do.
Okay. I'll jump to Jonathan also to stay on the topic of games. So you guys pretty global, I'd say maybe China accepted because of lack of Facebook there. What are the countries monetizing the best for you, as much as you can disclose, considering that you could
it's an interesting
have
question
some limits on that.
to use your metric for success, because success generally most people describe in two ways. One is users and the other is revenues. And we kind of think of it as an intertwined equation, is you want users and you want revenues. Because we make social games, so our games are not single player games, they're always connecting people. And that's actually the vision of the company, is to connect the world through games. We need to go after both. And so as you would expect, North America, Western Europe monetizes better than other areas of the world, but other areas of the world are still very, very important to us and can have profitable businesses.
Like we often hear about Indonesia, Turkey as very strong and active Facebook user bases. How's the monetization working there?
It's different, as you would expect. So you have to make sure that you have the content that they're interested in playing. You want to make sure that you have the payment methods by which they're used to paying for things. But again, if you're in a multiplayer social environment, a game, for instance, like Zynga Poker, liquidity on a poker table is incredibly important. People want to be able to show up and play with other people. So while some users might not pay as much in a certain area of the world, they're all incredibly important to the ecosystem. So that's what I mean by being an intertwined problem. We want to maximize revenues and users.
Okay. I'll ask Chris from GetJar about how did you guys get started on international? It looks like your company has been global from day one, actually. But did you see which countries started and to be stronger, and which ones are currently monetizing the best for you?
Yeah, well, we work with our partners. So we have about 100 partner apps that monetize with GetJar Gold. And so that means we're instantly in the markets that they're already in. So maybe I can answer this a little more generically and maybe target it more to not the largest success stories in the internet or in mobile, but to most people. And that is, those top 5 markets that Misha discussed are the same for just about everybody. But for GetJar, and our partner companies, they represent about 40 to 50% of revenue. So another way to look at this is to say, well, for all those other countries, that's still half the revenue. And the reason this is not necessarily true for all apps in Android. This is actually the problem that GetJar is trying to solve. All those places that Google doesn't have carrier billing, we can monetize. And so that means when you join up with GetJar Gold, we double your revenue. The way we do that is we're growing all those other countries. So there are ways to monetize. You just have to search them out. It's not going to be as easy as just give it to Google or give it to Apple and let it happen.
Okay. So we'll move on to if you have questions for each other. And you're also very welcome to post questions. So I think the hashtag is GMICSV, so we can see the questions, and we can pick up some if we have more time in the panel. So have you guys thought of questions for your fellow panelists?
I've got a question for the other panelists.
Go for it.
So how do you balance, kind of porting to different platforms and going after different localizations versus the revenue opportunity versus the users? That's a very tough equation. We struggle with it at times at Zynga for sure. And so I'd love to hear how you guys balance that in your companies.
Maybe I start. As a social network, it's extremely important that we're available for every mobile user, right? Friends don't choose each other based on kind of the platform they're on. So we're definitely building, and I think I mentioned the platforms earlier. We're definitely building for the platforms that we think are driving the biggest numbers. But because we want to be available on all platforms, whether they're brand new or whether they're relatively small or maybe even regional, what we usually do is we partner with these platforms and in some cases actually outsource the development. That works really well for us. It's very important for us that we have some control over design and kind of the application works. The nice thing is we have a very, very solid API that are not just OEMs are using, but like all sorts of other developers as well. We have a ton of games actually built on top of the platform, and that actually makes my work easier to kind of make the application available on other platforms.
I think the answer to these questions tends not to be magical. It's some combination of what your users want and where the revenue is. I think the more interesting kind of lesson for us is the importance of architecting your systems in such a way that you don't have to make as many trade-offs. One of the things that's interesting as we listen to the panel is we have a range of business models up here from I think a game that at its most basic level was fairly easy to localize to businesses that require kind of deep financial integration. For us, and maybe we're kind of in the middle, we thought very hard as we matured about doing things on an API, having a service-based architecture, about building our systems in such a way that the decisions, it was easy enough to go into new markets or easy enough to enable new platforms so that it wasn't super painful every time we had to make those trade-offs.
Any other question?
I can comment to that as well if you want. Our business is very different. We have to actually, instead of making it unified, we have to, because it's a gadget era right now, right? I mean, if you bought a gadget and if we don't give you our full attention to your gadget, you're not going to love us, right? So we're going to have to give you our full attention, meaning that optimize, make the game really run well and be a lot of fun. And we run on 3D TVs and this kind of stuff. It gets to be exciting and interesting to really support our expansion that way. But everybody's model is absolutely different, yes.
I'm going to pick one of the questions from the Twitter stream, and it's more addressed to Zeptolab and Zynga. So I'm first of all asking, what do you think of games that are where people are required to play with other people? So it's not specifically about local and global, but somehow it's about like multiplayer and real-time games. What do you think of
Where
this
they're
type of
required to
development?
play with other people.
Yeah, is it?
So just a different type of game. I mean, you
Do
have
you think there are like
single-player games.
intrinsic limitations to that, or?
There are. I mean, not everybody wants to play a multiplayer social game. Some people, want to play single-player games at a time. That's just a different type of genre. It's like, why do I want to go to a movie theater and watch a movie versus stay home and watch a TV show? It's just a different piece of content.
'Cause to some extent, Zynga games are like single-player games mostly, even though there's a social component. And asynchronous, so are you evolving towards more real-time experience?
That's actually an
or-
interesting point, which may help address the question is, we're trying to take what is a synchronous multiplayer experience and make it async. Because when you think about synchronous multiplayer games, it's very hard to line people up to say, hey, you're my friend, let's go meet at this point in the game and at this time, this date, and we'll have a great time together. That's actually a small fraction of the actual gameplay experience. So what we're trying to do when we talk about async social experiences is where you give the feeling that someone has interacted with you at your own time. So I show up and I see my friends and what they've done on my game board, and that feels like they're there with me, but they may have done that last week, yesterday. We're allowing that kind of social interaction to transcend time.
So you're breaking down synchronous gameplay to make it asynchronous. And most of your game are still limited by the social graph, maybe aside from Zynga Poker, where it's still fun to play with
Well,
people you
plenty
don't
of
know,
plenty of the other games, particularly on mobile, allow you to access things like the mobile address book, email lists, and invite. So, Words with Friends, a Draw Something, they allow you to invite people that may be in your social graph on Facebook or on Twitter or on Sina or Tencent. You can leverage those to connect with your friends, or you can leverage other methods.
Other
Yeah.
social graphs. Misha, what do you think? Your experience is mostly single player, but very successful at it. Are you looking into other type of gameplays?
We certainly are. I mean, and not going to repeat everything that's been said. It's all right on to the point. We're looking for some interesting new experiences with multiplayer. When we launch, we'll talk about them if they're successful, obviously. But not everything is multiplayer. Not everybody wants to compare their scores, right? So with our puzzle games, for example, we actually go into more of this, Zen category where we just give people stars. I mean, you get 3 stars, you're good. You're awesome. I mean, it's good multiplayer. I mean, I meet a lot of people and they tell me, hey, I got 3 stars there. It's multiplayer to you, but you can go from just social interaction all the way to real time. I mean, the possibilities are very, very interesting.
Okay. I see we just have a few minutes, so I'd like to ask all of you a bit more about what are the next steps in terms of internationalizing your services, going global, and if you have like some announcements regarding like recent developments of your services, maybe starting with Holger.
Yeah, so our big announcement I had mentioned earlier is on Monday we opened up our web interface to all users, everybody who basically wants to use our local recommendation engine. That's definitely something that we're going to build out. That's definitely a plan. We're probably also going to add languages over time. We're definitely, I think there's definitely a couple countries where we still have an English-only experience where I think we could profit from like actually providing local language support. But the key focus for us is really morphing the company from something that I think we were originally known for, like the check-in service and the gamification, to now this really powerful local recommendation engine.
I'd say I don't have anything specific to announce, but one of the things I'm most excited about in terms of Zynga's evolution is the launching of our publishing platform, both on web and mobile. And to me, that's a great extension out to third-party developers to access the audience that Zynga's been fortunate enough to amass to date, and really can help kind of cross borders between international developers and bringing them into different markets. For instance, bringing in a number of developers from China and helping them localize their content for Western markets and then publish them to the audience.
Okay. Do you see that as competition?
No, I think we could collaborate. I'm sure we could help monetize Zynga games better, particularly in those countries. I guess the news that's probably most applicable to this audience is 2 of GetJar's top developer partners and 2 of our top advertiser partners are in China. And we don't have an office in China. So I expect next year we will. And I expect next year will be a big year in mobile, and in particular in Android, for Chinese companies to go more global. I know this is a trend that's been going on a long time. You have very large and increasing sophistication in Chinese mobile companies, and they're preparing, and I think next year will go mobile, go global in a big way.
David?
We've talked a lot about Groupon as a consumer company, but we're actually a 2-sided network. We also work very closely with the small business partners. And a lot of the future for us is something that we're calling Merchant OS. It's the suite of mobile products that we're creating for small business. We've had a merchant application for a while, and then just recently we've announced 2 pretty exciting new products. One is Groupon Payments, which is a mobile-based payment service. And then the other just recently announced is Breadcrumb, an acquisition we made, which is a tablet-based point-of-sale system for restaurants. These won't be the last things that we do in that space.
Okay. Misha, you're the last.
Yeah, I guess we have the fun stuff. We just announced the short animation series that we're launching this month through our app, YouTube, and other channels. It's actually airing in theaters right now, in 19,000 theaters in the US. And we just announced live TV show with Sony Pictures Television, development of that. So imagine how cool that could be. We'll see what it comes.
Well, excellent. I think we just basically run out of time, and I thank you very much for all your insights. I think we'd like to invite the audience to join me to give you a big hand for all that. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I also saw some of the questions we couldn't field during the panel, so if you guys have time, check out the Twitter feed.